welcome to this masterclass brought to you by The Banker magazine. My name is Michelle Price. I'm the Trading and Technology Editor of The Banker. And I'm joined here today by Keith Sexton, who is the Global Director of Financial Markets at IBM. Today we are talking about systemic risk, a critical issue starkly underlined by the global financial crisis, the sheer scale of which was unprecedented. Keith, what do you think this has taught us about not only the nature of systemic risk, but also the nature of globalised modern finance?
Well, you mentioned it there. The reality is these markets are truly global. And I think the shock to the system has really heightened the fact that there's so much interconnectedness here in the markets nowadays that tracking that on a national system or tracking it by institution is all well and good until you have this sort of extreme event. The other thing that's been happening is clearly over the last 10 years or so we've had a massive increase in the sophistication of products in the marketplace. So what's also happened with that is some of those products have been harder to track or not tracked at all in some respects. We've also had what you might call the shadow banking system taking a larger role in terms of maturity transformation of money and various other aspects of taking risk and being a big part of that system that they weren't 10 or so years ago. So I think the biggest shock here is not that the market's global, it's not that firms operate globally, it's not that a shock in the US would be impactful in Asia or vice versa. It's that everything is so interconnected today.
Okay, so obviously we've identified there a confluence of several different factors. Do you think it's really possible at this stage in time to totally re-engineer the global financial system as it stands?
I don't think that's the question we should ask, actually. So you can't reverse progress, in effect. You wouldn't want to reverse progress. And you certainly wouldn't want to disable any positive aspects of innovation. But what needs to happen is that there has to be more transparency, clearly. I mean, that's the overused phrase that we hear every day now. But we do need transparency. So we truly do need to understand what everybody is up to, how that's regulated, what that means to the system in general. Once you have a degree of transparency, then you can start to talk about macroprudential supervision. Once you've got good macroprudential supervision, you can talk about how impactful that might be with microprudential supervision. So this has a lot of connotations both for the global system and the national system. But the financial system is a complex system, technically a complex system. It's also a complex adaptive system. So it continues to evolve. It has self-reinforcing behavior. So it's not about reversing and redoing the system, it's making the system safer. And the point is, in today's world, there are ways to do that, not least from a technology point of view, but there are sensible ways of doing that.
There's a Rumsfeldian angle here, isn't there? There are the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. And so do you think we now know enough and have enough transparency and understanding of what went wrong at this point in time to start to address the issue, or are we still in that process of discovery?
I think it's pretty well written and studied now as to the cause. And there are many causes, and there were many leveraging situations. So a lot of people will blame credit default swaps and OTC derivatives and all the rest of it. But in reality, this started with the housing market, it started with subprime, it started with the leverage that came out of subprime, it continued to be leveraged through cheap money. All that's well written up and thoughtfully reported on. I think the thing that is still unknown, a number of things are unknown, but the thing that is really unknown is how do you really measure the whole interconnectedness? So we know where some pools of risk are created, we know where some of the data resides, we know where many of the transactions in the market get reported, but what we haven't currently got is a picture of how you would see that and what you would do with that information. So of course systemic gets an emotive response because people immediately look at this as an interventionist exercise where people are very fearful about, well, I will have to give up my positions, I'll have to tell everybody who my counterparties are, I'll have to be very open. to some extent that is true, but you can get to a point where that data is anonymized and you have to look at it in a different way. But systemic is really a scenarios-based approach at the very highest level. So of course the super regulators, the supranational bodies like the IMF already run at big econometric models. What's wrong with running a financial model that starts to look at some of the aspects, start to track some of this interconnectedness? So the unknowns are probably not that difficult to unlock. There are some other unknowns, certainly from an industry point of view, in terms of some of the black holes that may still be out there. I think that's the worry still, hence the push by the regulators and supervisors for massive transparency. So of course, we may have the W-type recovery. I'm sure we will continue to see the market take losses on, credit exposures on the credit card, auto loans, everything away from subprime. The housing market's still not recovering in the way that gives everybody a lot of confidence. But I think those unknowns we can begin to challenge.